So that was truly epic, right? Obviously, most folks are going to watch footage like this and they're gonna be awed. I mean, this jaguar silently swimming up behind and then pouncing and immobilizing this massive caiman. It's spectacular footage. But my hope for you is that after taking Bio 182, you're going to be much better equipped to view an ecological interaction like this as a scientist, as a biologist. And as biologists, we always view nature through an eco-evolutionary lens, a biological perspective. As you will come to deeply understand throughout this entire course, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. But before we go there, your General Biology 2 class is evenly divided into 8 2-week modules if you're in a spring or a fall section. If you're in a summer section, it's 8 modules in 8 weeks. Either way, 182 moves fast. There is a lot of content, so buckle your seatbelts and get ready to get to work. First, let me explain to you what I mean by how I've crafted these 8 modules to guide you in viewing the natural world as a biologist. In Module 1, we're going to focus heavily on the nature of science. Science is so much more than just an increasing collection of facts, but science as a process, a tool. In fact, the best tool that humans have for understanding the natural world. A process that's ultimately driven by questions. To understand jaguars, we have to understand, how do they use space? Do they maintain territories? Do those territories look the same in males compared with females? What are the causes of their mortality? How many jaguars are left on planet Earth? So if you look closely, you'll see that ecologists are busy at work trying to understand those questions. That's a GPS, a global positioning system collar, and it probably has a radio collar as well, a VHF collar, a very high frequency radio collar. But these are collars that are deployed by wildlife ecologists to track animals, to gain insights into their worlds. So radio collaring is a method that I'm intimately familiar with, as I've had the privilege over numerous chapters in my life to mark animals. I started by radio collaring Sitka black-tailed deer in southeast Alaska on Prince of Wales Island. I spent 3 years in the Blackfoot Valley in Montana, where our team was able to radio mark 121 newborn calf elk. And then in a couple of different projects, both with Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I've had the opportunity to radio collar black bears, like you see here. That bear is not dead. She's just anesthetized with a powerful drug called ketamine. But we're going to talk more about ecological fieldwork and some of the research that I've done. I brought that into the class in the form of case studies later in the modules. Then in Module 2, we'll begin our exploration of the bedrock of biology, Darwinian evolution by natural selection. So in watching that video, the first thing that kind of struck me that I found remarkable is just how comfortable jaguars are in the water. So diving for like 30 seconds at a time with their eyes open, consuming prey underwater. A cat that's semi-aquatic? What? I thought that cats didn't like water. Have you ever tried to give your house cat a bath? It's not pretty. This behavioral difference, however, between house cats and jaguars is only understood when viewed through an evolutionary lens. By thinking about how nature selects for some behaviors in some environments, yet may select against those very same behaviors in other environments. Think about it. Jaguars, they're large-bodied cats that live in warm, tropical environments. Thermoregulation's not a big deal. They're not freezing to death in the Amazon. Those individual jaguars who ventured into the water, they were rewarded with large-bodied, calorically rich prey items like caimans and the semi-aquatic massive rodent known as the capybara. Those individual jaguars that employed this aquatic hunting style were more likely to survive, to reproduce, and then the females teach their kittens that behavior. However, your beloved domesticated cat, they evolved from very small-bodied Middle Eastern wildcats that live in very arid regions around the Sahara Desert and in the Middle East, hence their name, the Middle Eastern wildcat. So these are ecosystems that have very little standing water. There aren't much in the way of rivers and ponds and lakes. These are deserts, even drier than the Sonoran. And then further, when the Europeans bring their domestic cats into temperate regions in Europe, so temperate regions are regions that get cold, that have seasonality. So if a small-bodied wild cat ventures into a cold river in Sweden in December, it's hypothermia, it's death, it's lights out. That individual does not survive, and that behavior is not passed down. So house cats avoid water at all costs, in large part because this behavior was selected against in their wild ancestors. In Module 3, we're going to learn how to map out evolutionary relationships by constructing phylogenetic trees that are based on molecular sequencing. So, for example, recently researchers were able to map the genome of the jaguar on this phylogenetic tree relative to the genome maps of the other big cats. So these are the big cats. They belong to the genus Panthera, which in addition to jaguars includes lions and leopards, the snow leopard and the tiger. And also because The genetic work had already been done. You can see the house cat. That's the outlier here on the bottom, also included in this study. The researchers report, and I've got the citation down at the bottom, that they found over 13,000 genes that were similar across all species throughout the study. So this suggests that all cats diverged from a single ancestor. All of the big cats in the genus Panthera share a common ancestor some 4.6 million years ago. One that was probably anatomically a lot like the modern leopard. The team also found that all of the species populations have also declined dramatically over the past 300,000 years, and this is based on low genetic diversity that remains in the populations that still survive. But one surprise that they found was that all of the cats have engaged in crossbreeding at multiple times throughout the course of their history. And because of this genetic interchange at different periods across this 4.6 million years, they've evolved new features. So they suspect that the jaguar here, which has the strongest bite force of all the cats, and we're coming back to that. But it probably evolved that larger head and more muscular jaw after interbreeding with lions, which probably increased its bite strength and made it better equipped to hunt larger prey. In our fourth module, we're going to explore the evolutionary history of life on planet Earth. And I'm not talking about the minuscule span of recorded human history. I'm talking about deep time, from the formation of planet Earth some 4.5 billion years ago to the origins of life itself, the evolution of multicellularity, the explosion of animal body plans that occurs some 540 million years ago and gives rise to the lineages of many of the animals that we see today. We know that the jaguar is in the genus Panthera, the big cats. Many of them still survive today, but many do not. So when we look to the fossil record, we see evidence of many more large cats, just as recently as the Pleistocene, and right here in North America. So some 11,000 years ago, here in North America, there was a massive American lion. There were various species of saber-toothed cats. There was even an American cheetah that lived here in the Southwest. In fact, that's probably why the Sonoran pronghorn antelope is so fast. We call them speed goats because they evolved to run away from cheetahs. Several of these species coexisted with the first peoples of North America. The Smilodon, for example, which you can see many of their skulls in LA at the La Brea Tar Pits, they don't go extinct until about 10,000 years ago. But we don't know this until we look to the history that's recorded in the sedimentary rock. In both modules 5 and 6, we're going to take a deep dive into the diversity, the anatomy, and the physiology of both plants in Module 5 and animals in Module 6. Question: did you notice where the jaguar bit that caiman? Was that an accident? Was that random chance? I don't think so. That was a very precise bite at the base of the caiman's skull, meant to surgically pierce in between those bony scutes, the scales, the hard scales on the outside of the reptile, go in through the vertebral column and sever the spinal cord. So did you notice how that massive reptile started to thrash about and then just went limp? That was undoubtedly a technique that had been learned through trial and error and is likely taught from mother to kitten. In these modules, we're going to think about how form fits function. In other words, about how the morphology, the anatomy of the structure is going to inform the trained biologist about its job, about its function, what it does. So as I previously mentioned, the jaguar has the most powerful bite of any of the big cats. It's 2,000 pounds per square inch, which is, believe it or not, twice as powerful as a tiger. Why? Well, it's in large part because of this massive skull and this incredible temporal muscle and masseter muscle. But let me show you a closer look. Okay, so this is clearly not a jaguar skull. It's a smaller cat species, one that you may be familiar with. This is the skull from a bobcat, but it's going to show many of the morphological features that make cats the most carnivorous mammalian family. So right out of the gates, you're going to see this area here where this massive muscle connects. And then, of course, the musculature goes through here and powers this very powerful bite. The other thing that I would point out about the cats in comparison to the canids, the dog family, or the ursids, the bear family, is that they have a very compressed rostrum. Okay, so this area is considerably shorter, which shortens the length of the mandible, the lower jaw. So the mandible is really a type 3 lever. And if you remember from the physics of simple machines, the closer that the bite is to the fulcrum, okay, which is right here at the jaw joint, the shorter that distance, the greater the force. Okay, so cats have an extremely powerful bite because of the skull morphology as well as the incredible musculature. And then we're missing the canine on one side, but if I can spin it around, you can see that massive canine that cats have, as well as the carnassial teeth, which are here. Those are for shearing meat. But that canine is what pierces the caiman skull. Okay, so not a caiman, but it is a crocodilian. So this is the American alligator. But again, we are going to bite the prey item right at the base of the skull to sever the spinal cord. Lastly, some of you may be asking, are caimans of this size rare? Could that have been a female? Remember, the crocodilians are different from most reptiles because they care for their young. If that was a female caiman and she had offspring, are they going to survive? And then what about that individual jaguar? Likewise, is she a female? Is she now more likely to have larger litters with kittens that are more likely to survive because she can secure the calorie rich prey of these massive reptiles? These are the kinds of questions that a wildlife ecologist like myself is going to ask. So, in Module 7, we're going to hone in on both population and community ecology. And we're going to reflect on how populations grow, what limits their growth, as well as inter-specific interactions like predator-prey dynamics that can have a large impact in structuring entire ecological communities. And then in our final module 8, we will examine what I believe is the greatest challenge that humanity has ever faced, and that is the alarming, the incredibly precipitous decline in global biodiversity. For example, from the mid 1800s until today, the total population of jaguars, this apex predator from the tropical Americas, has declined dramatically. Today, jaguars occupy only 2/3 of their pre 1900 range. The jaguar is nearly absent from the United States, including here in southern Arizona. And similarly, it's extremely restricted at the northern limits of Argentina, the southern edge of its range. And then it's absent as well in large parts of Central America, where it was historically found. So there are two threats that have taken a particularly heavy toll on America's largest cat species: habitat destruction due to the conversion of tropical rainforests into agriculture as well as pasture for livestock, and then just outright direct killing of jaguars in response to livestock depredations. That said, there's good news. Jaguar populations have grown at an average annual rate of about 8% across field sites where the Wildlife Conservation Society works in Latin America between 2002 and 2016. In the sites analyzed, which includes areas throughout Central and South America, the jaguar population held steady or even expanded. And the best news is there was a threefold increase in jaguar densities in Bolivia's Madidi National Park. So that appears to be a stronghold. There's also really good news out of Mexico. You can see the sites here on the map on the right. If we take a look here, 2010 at each of those regions is represented by the light green color, the olive green color on the left. And then the dark green is from 2018. So during that time period, the population showed an average of about a 20% increase in this period across the country of Mexico. And then across many of these regions, we saw an increase in habitat, with the exception of the Yucatan Peninsula. So, all that said, are you ready to join me on this intellectual adventure? With that, I welcome you, and I hope that each of you are engaged. I hope that you're entertained. And most importantly, I hope that you grow as biologists throughout Biology 182. So thank you for your time. Give me a shout if you have any questions.